And now we want to return back to the ideas of meditation and contemplation. You're always going to find this cycle. It's going to be meditation and contemplation existing in your daily life, meditation and contemplation existing in your daily life, and so on. There will always be these cycles going on. And this probably will be a little bit more of a briefer talk because it's pretty straightforward. But we want to encourage you to start extending your time in meditation and contemplation. And again, this is discussed in the book Kriya Yoga Vichara. Kriya Yoga Vichara. And we want to do it in a very effective way, a very real way. We don't want to do it in a forced way that doesn't really accomplish anything. We don't want to do it in such a way that you are saying, because the great yogis meditated for 8 to 16 hours a day, I'm going to force myself to sit here for at least 3. And then all you end up doing is daydreaming or drifting off or bobbing your head or whatever it might be. And you're not really meditating. So first and foremost, you have to figure out what is the extent of time that you can actually stay alert yet relaxed, paying attention to your meditation techniques or your contemplative practices. What is that limit that you have? And once you reach that limit, you notice, you admit to yourself, honestly, that that's when you start to drift off, thinking about what you have to do later on in the day, or difficulties you've had, or daydreaming, whatever it might be. You need to be self-honest about determining how long is that. It might simply just be 5 minutes. It might be 20 minutes, could be 30 minutes. For most people, it's not actually longer than 30 minutes. People that you see locked in meditation for hours, most of the time, having a lot of experience with individuals like this, doing a lot of classes, running a meditation center for a while, they can look like they're meditating and they can stay upright. But when you actually talk to them about their experiences, you realize that it wasn't really what they would hope. So we got to be honest with ourselves, first and foremost. So figure out that limit first. Then what you want to do is experiment. Once a week, try to sit for twice as long. And see if you're able to use your capacity for surrender and willpower to actually extend your ability to stay alert yet relaxed for twice as long. It might require that you repeat meditation techniques. It might require that you start over a few times, but it doesn't matter. As long as you're able to remain alert yet relaxed, that's the key, the capacity to focus. Do that at least once a week, just as an experiment, and see how much further you can extend it. And what you'll find is in time, the more you do that over a couple months, maybe 6 months or so, you will gradually be able to actually increase your time. Now, another thing that you can try, which is very helpful, is say you only meditate for 30 minutes. And that's a good bit of time if you're doing it well. It's actually an excellent amount of time if you are doing it well. So then what you do is every other day, you simply sit for 35 minutes. See how that works, until eventually you get to the point to where 35 minutes is your next step. So you want to do it gradually over time. And even if it's only 5 minutes, don't worry about it. If you can just do it for 5 minutes, that is also quite good compared to the average human consciousness. So if it's only 5 minutes, bump it up to 7, or do 10 minutes. An extra 5 minutes if you do 5 minutes, an extra 5 minutes, so 10 minutes once a week, until you gradually build it up. But you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot by trying to do more than is possible based on who you are, and everyone's going to be different. I remember I used to try to force myself to meditate for hours on end, and I would just end up giving myself a headache and not really doing it very well. 16 years later, I can sit for a couple hours just fine, no problem, perfectly awake, not falling asleep, no body aches, not even having to do very many meditation techniques to stay in a state of clarity. But that's 16 years of daily practice. Even when I was sick, I would meditate. Even when I would travel, I would meditate. There was, I would say, probably 30 days that I can think of, about a month's worth in the past 16 years, where I did not engage the practice. And that's not very many days, really. And those are usually because of things I could not help or foresee, emergencies or events that it really got in the way that it was not able to happen. But you need to think about that long term over time, not trying to force it all at once. Another very important process to increase your time in meditation, and when I've told students about this, they didn't really believe it at first, but the more they actually do it, they see that it works. It's to take a day when you have nothing to do, maybe a Sunday, whatever day when you have nothing to do. You don't have any obligation, you don't have to go anywhere, no one's expecting you to do anything. You yourself aren't planning on cutting the grass or cleaning the kitchen or whatever it might be. Just to set aside a day when you're going to do nothing. And then sit down to meditate without a time limit. Remove your clock, put your clock somewhere else. And what I have found is that when people do that, it's almost like magic. They'll find themselves meditating sometimes twice as long as normal, even up to 3 times as long as normal, and they think it feels like it was the same amount of time they normally would meditate, meaning that if they meditate for half an hour, they might decide, okay, I'm going to start at 9 a.m. and I'm just going to sit here and do my meditation techniques and do whatever I need to remain focused, even if I repeat meditation techniques, to sit in the silence, to practice my contemplative techniques, as we've discussed throughout this cycle. So if you need more emphasis, description of contemplative practices, meditation techniques, review the previous videos in this series, the Kriya Yoga Meditation Beginner's Guide, or look at the intermediate and advanced techniques listed in Kriya Yoga Vichara, the book Kriya Yoga Vichara. And you just repeat them to keep yourself in the groove. And you do that, and what people find is if they usually sit for a half hour, an hour and a half will go by. And they'll think, okay, well, I'm probably done now. And they'll go look at the clock and they'll be amazed. Like, I usually only sit for a half hour, and I've just sat for an hour and a half, nearly 2 more times as long as normal, and it's natural to them. So you might want to experiment with doing that once a week. And don't be hard on yourself if you actually meditate a little shorter during that time, because it fluctuates. But it may be that during that shorter period of time, you had a much better, clearer, deeper meditation, more alert, more awake, than if you would have tried to force yourself to sit longer. And on those days when you've got absolutely nothing to do, maybe do it twice. So you want to set aside a day where you've got no issues to attend to. And you're just free to explore the process of meditation. And what I've often found is that people are able to naturally extend their meditations when they just do it more free form, still sticking to the structure of their meditation techniques. Practicing a technique, existing in the silence afterwards. Repeating, sitting in the silence. A different technique, sitting in the silence. They do wonderfully in that regard. But also don't ignore the process of training too. In the same way that when you go to exercise, you start with a certain amount of weight that you can lift. Then gradually over time you increase it. But it's gradually over time. You don't go from 50 pounds to 150 pounds in a week. So explore this. And the more you're able to extend your time in effective, awake, alert meditation and contemplative practices, the more it becomes joyful for you, because it becomes less of a chore, and it seems more so like you are actually communing with the wholeness of life yourself. It's like you are actually in a deep conversation with the most beloved person in the world. You enjoy it, you love it, it's refreshing, it's satisfying, it's renewing, and you don't see it as a chore. I always like to say that when a person is really getting into meditation well, when they look forward to it in the same way that a person coming home on a bitter cold day gets into a nice hot bath, assuming you like hot baths. And you're just there. When you take a hot bath, you're not passing out, you're not daydreaming. What are you doing? You are just simply aware of the warmth the resetting of your nervous system, the comfort that water provides. And you're awake the whole time, at least I assume, and I hope so you don't drown. But that's the way meditation turns into as you deepen the process. It's not something you think, oh, I got to meditate. My guru says I got to meditate, so I better do it. Or, if I want to fit in with my spiritual community, they're going to look down on me if I don't meditate, so I better do it. Or I got to look spiritual, so I better go meditate. I mean, who's going to think I'm a spiritual person if I can only meditate for 5 minutes? All the silly things that people think. But if you do it not because of those reasons, but because it's a sheer joy for you. It's like coming home. And then it permeates the rest of your day and the rest of your life. In the same way that when you spend time with a loved one, you don't have to spend every waking moment with that person. You know that you are in a relationship with that individual, and that times will come when you'll be together, times will come when you're not, but it sustains you. It's comforting, it's renewing, it's enlivening. And this is the same way that developing your capacity for meditation can benefit your life as well. So keep this in mind and use these kinds of thoughts, principles, ideas to slowly and gradually, if you want, to increase your capacity to meditate. And I think you'll find it to be extremely rewarding.